Hospitality is where we started, and we've transitioned into some other business ventures.
I just believe that I can always train for skill, but I can't train you to be nice.
And I kind of gave that up and decided to just go different directions.
And now, here's Just Saying.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Just Saying podcast. It's been 31 years since I first started in television broadcasting. June 19th is the actual anniversary date. And in that time, I've learned a lot about news reporting. Even though I started out as a sportscaster, I was always surrounded by really good news people. And while news and sports both report on various topics in sort of a different way, the approach is different because news predominantly focuses on what attracts attention using eye-catching headlines, while sports predominantly focuses on accomplishments. And so when I switched over from sports to news, I became very familiar with the phrase, and I'm sure you've heard it as well, if it bleeds, it leads. It's pretty much how newsrooms decide on what the top story is going to be or what the juicy story is going to be that gets the most eyeballs and page views and clicks, or however they monetize their audience these days. But if you're one of those people who say, why can't we just have a news organization that reports good news? Well, the reason for that is that it's not a sustainable model because humans have a built-in negativity bias. It's true. That's why bad news travels faster than good news. There's a great episode on this subject on the Freakonomics podcast called Reasons to be Cheerful, episode 417. And I encourage you to check it out. It discusses why people gravitate to the negative more than the positive. The people that I admire for their smarts and their ability to offer up stories in an even way that let you decide have somewhat become a minority these days. And I get it. There's a lot more competition in today's world of advertising, with more and more platforms vying for your attention. And attention obviously means ad dollars. So today, as I approach my 31st anniversary in broadcasting, I wanted to do a little exercise on the presentation of stories with you. And just so you are aware that this isn't a podcast of choosing one side of media against another or trying to convince you to my views. It's an exercise in how you perceive stories presented and how your brain processes the information you receive. So to that end, I've collected 4 videos that I'm going to use in this exercise. And when you see these video examples that we'll show you in a minute, I want you to think about what I said as far as humans having a built-in negativity bias. One of the stories is going to be heartfelt. Another one will be humorous. One will be a little contentious. And the final one will be a story of success. And what I want you to pay attention to is what's going on with the receptors of your mind as these stories play out and how you are receiving them. Because what the media is doing today is reporting in a somewhat manipulative fashion, front-loading stories with the biased narrative, knowing that we read the headlines and maybe just a paragraph or two before we move on, and claiming that they are reporting fair and with journalistic integrity because they put the other stuff they don't want you to have an opinion about at the bottom of the article. And it's not left-wing media or right-wing media, it's the media. So in only one of these video examples will there be really room for dissension or difference of opinion. In the first story, I took the liberty to try and help to evoke an emotion from you by using music. But you should still feel the essence of the story by the nature of its content. Of course, there are no right or wrong answers here. It's really up to you how you feel. This exercise is to see if you are conscious of how your brain is working with or without you even knowing it, okay? All right, so let's start with Jeffrey Dean Morgan from The Walking Dead show on AMC. He's an overall down-to-earth guy. When I first met Morgan and his wife, Hillary Burton, they were doing a fundraiser for Astor Services at Bard College. Now, I'll tell you honestly, I didn't really know who Jeffrey Dean Morgan was or Hillary Burton, other than that Morgan appeared in the final episode of Walking Dead. I think it was season 6. But since then, I've kind of become interview buddies with him, and I'm really glad I didn't know him like I know him now, because I might have been a little starstruck had I known of all of his accomplishments and just how good an actor he is before that initial interview. But he's a great guy. Hillary is great too. So much positive energy. So after the interview about living in the Hudson Valley, among other things, we caught up a few months later after they started to do the renovations of a residential wing at the Rhinebeck location of Astor Services for Children, which is what the fundraiser was for. So here's the backstory. I was getting a haircut at the men's room in Highland. Shout out to the men's room because they are awesome. And this was just before heading up to do this interview that you're going to see. Carrie Ann, who was cutting my hair, shout out to Carrie Ann because she is awesome, was telling me about a friend of hers who did one of Morgan's latest tattoos at his home. The tattoo was the name of Morgan's dog. So fast forward to the interview and tour of the facility. I spoke with Hillary about doing that story. And then there was this lull where Jeffrey Dean Morgan was off to the side in this parlor room all by himself. So I went over to him and I asked him about the tattoo. And he seemed surprised that I knew about it. And he started to tell me about it. And then what really caught me off guard was he started getting emotional, teary-eyed. He started explaining that he got the tattoo in honor of a rescued dog he recently lost, a dog he had for, I think it was like 17 years. It was a great story. So I asked him if he would want to tell that story on camera with me. And I figured fans would really love to hear it. And at first he said no. And then he said, okay. And I said, no pressure. That's okay. And then he said, no, it's okay. Let's do it. And then he said no again. You could tell he was really attached to this dog and wrestling with the loss that had hit him so hard. So now the strange thing for me is seeing this man getting emotional, because I think the last time I saw him, he was cracking heads with a baseball bat in that episode of Walking Dead. So that juxtaposition of emotion was exactly why I wanted him to tell the story, so fans could see the everyday Joe kind of quality that I saw him in. Okay, so we get set up and he's still having a hard time telling the story. Here's how that presentation went.
What a lot of people might not know. Well, Jeff has a couple of tattoos, right? You have a couple of tattoos,
I don't know how many I've got, like maybe 10?
No, really, 10?
Yeah.
All right. One of the more recent ones you got is what we want to talk about.
Okay.
And show us the tattoo first of all.
Sure.
You can see it right there.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Bijou. She was a dog that I got 19 years ago that I rescued. God, it's going to make me tear up. I suck.
We have editing.
Yeah, a dog that I got 19 years ago. I can't do it. I can't even talk about her. I rescued her on the Venice boardwalk. I literally, some kids were selling like 3 litters of puppies, and I dug through the box, and there was one she was maybe 4 inches long, and I was like, I want to take that one that's not going to make it through the day. And I bottle fed her for about a month, and she was a Rottweiler mix. And I had her for 17 years, and then like 2 days after she passed, I had her name tattooed on my arm. But oh my God, I miss her. I miss her so much.
Well, let me ask you this then.
Yeah, go.
And my best Negan impersonation. You're rescuing dogs, and you're helping out kids in children's homes. How badass can you actually be?
Oh, I'm a bit. Don't push it, dude. I will crack you in the skull. No.
So your brain should have evoked an emotion in seeing him initially tear up, and then take that emotional turn to another level when the light piano music came in. And then the laughter when he flipped it around and he went into his Negan character. Yes? Well, that was kind of premeditated because I had put the music in there to kind of heighten the emotion, but the emotion was there to begin with. All right. Next story is one of humor. I caught up with Johnny Brennan, the creator of the Jerky Boys, with the characters of Saul Rosenberg and Frank Rizzo, and the voice actor for the character of Mort Goldman on The Family Guy. Now, Brennan is hilarious. He was one of the guys who used to do the prank phone calls and record them. I don't know if you remember that, but if you don't, check them out. I think on YouTube you can find them because it's funny stuff. So those prank phone calls led to Brennan getting the Family Guy gig. And this story should just be humorous in the fact of the way Brennan goes about in telling the story and getting into character. Face value, humor. Here's how that went.
Open your ears, jackass. All right, ZZO, Rizzo, Frank. They actually say in magazines and articles, the only thing that was reality before the Jerky Boys was Alan Funt. And Alan Funt was great. But when you think about it, the Jerky Boys really created this whole reality craze. And the rest is history.
All right, let's talk about Family Guy and how that came to be.
Well, actually, Seth, the creator of Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane, was a huge fan of mine when he was a kid. We brought Sal Rosenberg toward Family Guy and created Mort Goldman. So Mort Goldman, I always say, is Sal Rosenberg's long-lost cousin. So, and Mort Goldman is like if you listen to Sal from the Jerky Boys, he's like, yes, should I bring all my shoes and glasses so I have them? And Mort Goldman's more like, yes, Peter, hello. Yes, Lois, hi. Like, much more amped up. But everybody knows right away, when they hear the character, they say, oh my God, that's Johnny Brennan. They recognize it right away. Should I bring my toolbox? I'll see you tomorrow with my tools, face.
Okay, so that one should have been somewhat humorous to you, not laugh out loud funny. Of course, humor can be subjective. But for the purpose of this exercise, it should have made you smile and definitely should not have had you thinking any bad thoughts, right? Well, maybe the F-bomb at the end, but we bleep that out because this is a family show. Okay, this next one kind of speaks for itself. Listen to the interviews because I spoke to quite a few people and the interviews were basically all the same. I didn't have an opportunity to show two sides to this story and let you make your own decision because all of the interviews were exactly the same-sided. And that could be a positive or a negative thing for you, depending on how your views align with the people that I interviewed. So here's the setup. It was the day after President Trump was sworn into office. Thousands of people walked across the walkway over the Hudson in upstate New York as part of the National Women's March. Many of the people in attendance wanted to make their grievances known in protest of Trump. Now, for those of you listening to the podcast, there are some handheld signs that go along with my interview questions that the video shows. But if you really need to see the video, you can go to YouTube, search for Women's March Across the Walkway. All right? I will say no more. Here's the story.
The guy hasn't even been in office for 24 hours. You already want to impeach him.
Yep, absolutely.
Tell me why.
It goes without saying, just what he believes in.
Hey, so tell me why you're here. You can walk while we're talking.
Because I believe you have to represent. The people have to come out and say what they believe, and this is how we're doing it, I guess.
And what do you believe?
What do I believe? I believe that we all have rights. Every human has rights, and they have to be the same, equally honored.
So tell me why you think Trump is dangerous.
I think the relationship he has with Putin and the Soviet Union is alarming. I'm not sure what's happening there because he's refused to release the tax returns. Really, none of us know. But it's definitely cause for alarm, and I think it makes us question, exactly the agenda. I think the Americans have the right to know.
So you came all the way down from Columbia County?
Yes, we did.
And why did you feel it was important to do so?
Oh my God, it's the first day of the Trump presidency. We got to show them that we have some unfinished business here.
What do you hope comes out of this?
Mass organization and continued resistance and continued defiance against an obvious fascist and a fascist agenda. We have a very dark 4 years ahead of us, and we have to come out of it with a new enlightenment.
Well, you covered it all.
Yes, there's a lot of stuff here, and this is a great cause today, and I'm here to support the women and the whole country in general.
I love that guy with the catch-all sign, Black Lives Matter, no human is illegal, science is real. So you watch that, and you might agree with some or all of those people, or you may not. Either way, I'm guessing that this one, based on its content, made you feel happy or anxious or angry, depending on your view of Trump. Now, don't email me about this one. That story was back in January of 2017, so long ago. The point that I'm making is that the content probably made you feel something because of the topic is so polarizing. But was that because of the way I reported the story or because of the content of the story? That's a rhetorical question. Put that pen down. Don't email me. Okay, this final one has over 341,000 views and counting. It's the day when America's Got Talent winner Grace VanderWaal came back to her hometown in Suffern, New York, to a rousing homecoming welcome. Watch this one.
She's got so much going on in her mind right now. It's just crazy. So amazing. Grace!
Congratulations, Grace.
Thank you.
She's an outstanding singer, and she's a super talented songwriter.
When you listen to her poetry and the text of her music, it's just fantastic.
Today, October 1st, 2016, is the first winner of the Key to Rockland County.
We want Grace! We want Grace!
Thank you for everyone who has supported me. I'm almost 100% positive that 60% of the votes was Suffern. Looking at it.
An exciting time for Grace, who was all of 12 years old back then in October of 2016. And kudos to Jay Berkey for fighting the crowds to get that footage. So what was your reaction to that one? Were you happy for her? You should be. I mean, she was only 12 years old. She won a national talent contest seen by millions of viewers. But maybe you didn't like the fact that a 12-year-old girl got a hero's welcome just because she won a contest. Or maybe you don't like the ukulele. Or the Rockland County Executive Ed Day. I particularly like Ed Day. I think he's doing a good job. But be truthful with yourself. For the purpose of this experiment, did you find yourself thinking any negative thoughts during that story? Maybe you were still thinking about the previous story, and in that case, you get a pass. But those are just some of the examples of how emotional, heartfelt stories will let you in. Humor can make you feel a little lighthearted. Success should make you happy or proud, and anything political will probably get you riled up. So hopefully this exercise brings two things to light. One is that a lot of what makes you feel the way you do could be from a predisposition to a negative bias. Some of how you felt could be because of the content itself, or the way the presenter made you feel, like I did with Jeffrey Dean Morgan and the piano. But in a lot of cases, this is all calculated by the so-called journalists who are trying to push an agenda or a narrative. When I produce a video for a client, I have a list of 20 questions that I ask. And the first one is, what's the goal here? Meaning, what emotion do you want to evoke, or what action do you want the viewer to take, if any? And those are good questions to get answered, because then I know how to proceed to produce the video in a way that will do what the client wants and get the results that they're paying for. It's the same thing in the news industry and the stories that we see on television or read online. It seems as though journalists, not all, but most, are under extreme pressure to get views and social media traction. And dare I say it, just sometimes a blatant, hey, I'm the reporter, look at me. The writer, the producer, the company, all have a purpose, not necessarily a responsibility. Well, they really should have a responsibility if they're real journalists. But these days, there's always an agenda. And as intelligent human beings, we should be able to recognize when the media is trying to manipulate our thoughts and be able to separate out that purpose that they have, if there is one. We should be able to make our own judgments and assessments, whether it's left-wing or right-wing, whether you like Fox News or CNN or ABC or NPR. If the media is just dropping down what they want you to pick up, we should be able to recognize that and do more of our own unbiased research. We typically gravitate to the news that aligns with our own beliefs, or what we desperately hope to be true. But the bottom line is this. And here's what I hope the experiment proves. And that is that it best serves us to check out the other side of the story, because there's always two sides to every story. You can listen to your favorite anchors and reporters all you want, but it's important for us to fact check and get the full picture, especially these days. Even if the initial story sounds like what we want it to sound like, because if we do that, we are allowing the media to mislead us, and an organization possibly to mislead us, or a country to mislead us, or government officials to mislead us. So by doing our own fact checking, we'll be less likely to allow them to divide us. There's a lot of division in the world right now. You could say it's because of the president or the Democrats or the Republicans or social media, where everyone can say whatever they might want to say, but they would never say it in person. But I believe a lot of this dissension is because of how the media portrays things and manipulates how they present it to target our inherent negativity bias. We should do our own research, our own fact checking, and then as people, we can be better informed to make our own minds up without the media trying to do it for us. I'm just saying. Folks, that will do it for this edition of the Just Saying podcast. Thanks for playing along. Hey, if you suffer from anxiety or weight gain or constant pain, or you have a habit that you just can't seem to break, you'll want to tune in next week, because our guest will be Anthony Serino, a personal development coach and hypnotist, who will share some tips on how you can help yourself through whatever it is that ails you. So tune in for that. That should be fascinating. As always, stay safe and be kind. We'll talk again next week on the Just Saying podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Just Saying podcast.